G7 leaders have vowed to step up action on climate change. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says world leaders want to drive a global green industrial revolution. They've committed to slashing their carbon emissions by 2030 and phase out what they call the use of unabated coal as soon as possible. And of course, this is hugely ironic because we're just about to get our two biggest coal-fired power stations, some of the biggest in the world, going by 2023-2024. Anyway, for a reaction to this, I'm joined by Thandile Chinyavanhu from Greenpeace Africa. Thandile, tell me what you think about this particular promise. Do you think it's just words, or are there going to be concrete actions and a plan?
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me. As always, one can only hope that such discussions can lead to concrete solutions, but we remain apprehensive, as we have seen in the past, how our governments tend to delay the necessary action, especially when it comes to climate change. So we definitely want to see the G7 upholding their commitment to the $1 billion that has been committed annually. And we definitely want to see South Africa putting the political will behind the foreign aid and actually channeling it into decisive climate action.
But how can we even expect South Africa to do any better when we know that we're going to be firing up Kusile and Medupi in 2 to 3 years' time, and they're going to have huge coal emissions? Those are coal-fired power stations. What is Greenpeace doing about that?
Well, Greenpeace Africa continues to campaign against coal-based economy based on the work that Eskom and Sasol are doing. We continue to campaign against their fossil-fueled business model and really campaign for the government to move away from that and more towards green and sustainable energy sources. So we welcome the decision by the President made over the weekend to allow for independent power producers to generate more energy up to 100 megawatts. We welcome that idea, and we're hopeful that it will see us moving out of the energy crisis that we currently find ourselves in due to Eskom's infrastructure, delays in infrastructure, and our continuous cutting in terms of our public infrastructure expenditure.
Thandile, Greenpeace is famous for doing things quite robustly. We remember seeing Greenpeace activists arrested in the north when they were, against whaling or various other activities by nations that are harmful to the environment. We haven't really seen Greenpeace in Africa, or in particular in South Africa, working as aggressively, for example, to push wind power and solar. We certainly don't see it much. Are you much quieter on this continent than you are at other parts of the world?
I think for those that are engaging with the content and interested in renewable energy, you'll definitely see Greenpeace Africa working in these spaces. It's unfortunate, however, that we're dealing with a situation in South Africa where there, as I mentioned, isn't currently enough political will for renewable energy uptake. One of the things that we continue to campaign for, particularly around the nationally determined contributions, which our Department of Forest, Fisheries and Environment recently released an updated version of, was for greater inclusion of renewable energies in our integrated resource plan. So the integrated resource plan, as one of the mitigation mechanisms proposed in the NDC, has the greatest potential to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and really set us on course to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius target that we've agreed to in the Paris Agreement. It could offer us a reduction of 84 metric tons of carbon dioxide annually. So Greenpeace has really been campaigning for us to South Africa to really exploit the potential of the integrated resource plan. And of course, we're a non-profit organization, so we continue to do work around this, and we rely on regular listeners or regular people just such as your listeners to continue to donate to Greenpeace Africa so we can continue to do a lot of the work that we do.
How are you going to help us solve our problems with emissions? We understand that the cost of desulfurization, for example, at Medupi and Kusile, comes to some 80 billion rand. We already do not have the kind of money that we need to support so many social programs in this country. What can Greenpeace do to help us sort that particular mess out?
Well, Well, Greenpeace Africa does not advocate at all for carbon capture technology or sequestration technology. We believe it's a false solution and it will allow these carbon majors such as Eskom and Sasol to continue to pollute unabated. And really, I think the sulfur dioxide stench that we all got a whiff of in the Gauteng region earlier this year is an indication that we cannot trust these companies to self-regulate when it comes to such issues such as our own public health. And I'm really glad that you brought up the issue of social justice and some of the social inclusions that we need to make. As President Ramaphosa did discuss in the address, that one of the issues that was quite pertinent to them was the vaccine equity. And that is something that, as Greenpeace Africa, we widely support and would really be a key component of achieving social justice, which is something that we campaign for. So the sooner that we can really get vaccine equity, then the sooner we can get people back to work safely, jumpstart the economy, and refocus our efforts towards climate action. Something that's very important for South Africans to bear in mind is that the behavior that we've witnessed during this pandemic from the developing countries, it's simply a precursor to what the climate crisis will hold for us. As climate anxiety starts to take its toll on these developing countries, we're likely going to see a lot of people hoarding resources, much like we did when they were stockpiling the resources at the beginning of the pandemic, and now with the vaccine. So as a developing country, we need to recognize that we really need to invest a whole lot more in our public infrastructure and our social interventions, because in a matter of a few years, we are going to be struggling as we struggle to stay afloat, and the developed countries simply watch.
Thandile Chinyavanhu is from Greenpeace Africa. Thank you for your time.